Wrens are notorious for demanding to speak to the manager, but what happens when there's no manager to demand? In the quiet seclusion of his mountain cabin, Victor Rubov faces just such a Karen, armed with entitlement and a rental confirmation for a house that was never for rent. Threats are made, and tempers flare, but Karen is about to discover that this seemingly easy target is actually a cop who handles lawbreakers for a living. Victor Rubov, a seasoned police officer, had always sought solace in the quiet embrace of nature, especially after grueling cases. His refuge was a family cabin hidden deep within the mountains, a legacy built by his great-grandfather. It stood as a silent testament to resilience, surrounded by towering pines and ancient oaks. After a particularly taxing operation targeting a dangerous criminal network, Victor needed a break from the chaos of his job. He headed to the cabin to find peace and to reconnect with the simplicity of nature. The cabin, isolated miles from the nearest neighbor and even farther from the bustling chaos of the nearest town, was his sanctuary. One crisp Sunday morning, Victor was savoring the serenity of the forest, seated on the wide wooden porch with a steaming mug of coffee. The trees were lush, and the air carried a mix of frost and new life. It was the perfect day to unwind, no reports to write, no crime scenes to visit, just the tranquil symphony of rustling leaves and bird song. However, the peace was abruptly shattered by the crunch of tires on gravel. A sleek black SUV rolled into view, disturbing the natural harmony. The vehicle, with its glossy exterior, seemed starkly out of place against the rustic backdrop of the cabin. It came to a halt, throwing up a cloud of dust. From the driver's seat emerged a woman, her every movement radiating entitlement. Dressed in white slacks and a tailored blouse, her designer sunglasses reflected the cabin as if critiquing its existence. Her demeanor spoke volumes, irritation mixed with a superiority that seemed to challenge the very air around her. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp and impatient. "Is this 314 Mountain View Road?" Before Victor could respond, the passenger door opened, and a large, broad-shouldered man stepped out. He was followed by two teenagers, a boy and a girl, who appeared utterly disinterested in their surroundings. Victor, maintaining his composure, approached them. "This is private property," he stated, his tone polite yet firm. "Can I help you?" The woman scoffed, removing her sunglasses in a dramatic flourish. "Private property? I don't think so. My husband and I rented this cabin for the week," she declared, waving her phone as if it were a badge of authority. "I have the confirmation right here." Victor frowned. "There must be a mistake. This cabin isn't available for rent. It belongs to my family, and we've never listed it as a rental." The woman's face hardened, and her tone became icy. "Listen, we've been driving for hours. I have an email that says this place is ours for the week, so why don't you hand over the keys and stop wasting our time?" Her husband stepped closer, his stance intimidating. "Yeah, buddy, don't make this a problem. We paid good money for this place." Victor's training as a police officer had taught him to remain calm in tense situations. "I'm sorry you've been misled, but this is private property. You'll need to contact whoever you booked through to resolve this." The situation escalated quickly. The woman, now furious, snapped, "Do you even know who I am? I have contacts who could make your life very difficult." Victor met her gaze evenly. "Ma'am, I'm only telling you the facts. This property isn't for rent. I need you to leave." Her response was a harsh laugh, dripping with disdain. "Leave? We're not going anywhere. This is our vacation and we're staying right here." The standoff at the cabin had begun, and it was clear that Karen didn't know who she was dealing with, a cop who wouldn't back down. As the tension thickened between Victor and the uninvited guests, the woman, whom Victor would later know only as Karen, stepped closer, her heels crunching against the gravel assertively. Behind her, her husband, Artie, loomed like a silent threat, his arms crossed, his jaw set in a hard line. "Listen here," Karen hissed, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "We've had enough of your nonsense. Hand over the keys or there will be consequences." Her tone was venomous, her posture aggressive, as if she was ready to pounce at any provocation. Victor, undeterred by her threats, stood his ground. His years as a cop had taught him how to handle confrontations with a calm that only infuriated Karen more. "As I've said before, this is private property. I'm a police officer and you are trespassing. I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately," he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Karen scoffed, her face twisting into a mask of fury. "You think that badge scares me? You're out here in the middle of nowhere, cop or no cop. You don't have any power here," she snapped. The crunch of gravel underfoot signaled the arrival of yet another car. This time, it was a local sheriff's patrol car, its appearance a mere coincidence, as Deputy Jenna Maris was making her routine rounds in the area. She stepped out, her uniform crisply in contrast to the natural surroundings, her badge glinting in the sunlight. Deputy Maris quickly assessed the situation. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her gaze shifting from Victor to the unwelcome visitors. Karen turned her ire towards the deputy. "Yes, there is a problem. This man," she gestured towards Victor with a dismissive flick of her wrist, "is pretending to own this cabin. We rented it and now he's threatening us." Deputy Maris looked at Victor, who quickly explained the situation. They claim they've rented my family cabin, but it's not for rent. I've told them they need to leave, but they refuse. Understanding the situation, Deputy Maris turned her attention back to Karen and her family. Ma'am, if this man says he owns the property, I'm going to need to see some proof of your rental agreement. Karen, flustered but defiant, pulled out her phone, showing an email confirmation. Deputy Maris examined it briefly. This appears to be a reservation for a cabin, but I'm familiar with the area, and this address doesn't match any rental properties. I think you've been scammed. This revelation did little to soothe Karen's fury. This is absurd, we paid good money for this place. He's lying, he has to be, she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. Victor remained silent, his patience wearing thin as he watched Karen spiral into rage. Deputy Maris suggested, I recommend you contact the rental agency immediately to clarify this mistake. Until then, you need to vacate the premises. Karen looked as though she was about to argue further, but Artie, perhaps realizing the futility of the situation, or the potential legal ramifications, placed a hand on her shoulder. Let's just go, he muttered, his tone weary. Reluctantly, Karen and her family returned to their SUV. As they drove away, the dust settling from their hasty departure, Deputy Maris turned to Victor. You okay, Victor? Yeah, thanks for showing up when you did, Jenna. I'm not sure how much longer that would have gone on without getting ugly, Victor replied, a weary smile crossing his face. The deputy nodded, her expression sympathetic. Scams like these are becoming more common. I'll patrol the area more frequently just in case they decide to come back. With a grateful nod, Victor watched as Deputy Maris drove off, the tranquility of the mountains slowly reinstating itself around him. He knew this was likely not the end of his troubles with Karen and her family, but for now, the peace of his mountain retreat was restored. Back at the cabin, the rest of Victor's day passed uneventfully, but the encounter with Karen and her family lingered in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the last he would see of them. His intuition proved right sooner than he expected. The next morning, Victor was surprised by a knock at his door. Standing on his porch was a local sheriff's officer with a concerned expression. Victor, there's been a complaint filed against you, the officer announced, handing him an official-looking document. Victor's heart sank. What happened next? Was he about to be arrested? Are you curious about what unfolds? Well, let's find out. Before we continue, a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this unfolding drama and want to hear more gripping stories like Victor's, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to bring these voices to life and share even more unforgettable narratives. Now, let's return to the thickening mystery surrounding Karen's decision to target someone as unsuspecting as Victor. Victor scanned the contents of the document, his brow furrowing. The complaint was from Karen, alleging harassment and unlawful eviction. She was demanding compensation for the emotional distress, and the vacation ruined by what she claimed was Victor's overly aggressive behavior. Victor sighed deeply, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He knew he had to seek legal counsel. This was no longer a simple misunderstanding or a case of mistaken property rental. It was an accusation that could tarnish his reputation and career. He contacted a lawyer, explaining the situation and providing evidence of his ownership of the cabin, along with the deputy's report from the day of the incident. His lawyer, a seasoned attorney named Eliza Grant, listened intently before speaking reassuringly. We'll get this sorted out, Victor. It's clear you've done nothing wrong. Let's prepare a strong defense and clear your name. Weeks that followed were tense. Karen and her husband escalated their claims, involving local media and painting Victor as a rogue cop who abused his power against a family just trying to enjoy their holiday. The story gained traction, and Victor found himself the subject of local gossip and news articles questioning his conduct. Victor's stress was palpable as he walked into the courtroom on the day of the hearing. He was met with smirks from Karen and Artie, who sat confidently with their attorney, a slick, well-dressed man who seemed to relish the media circus they had created. Liza was a calm presence beside Victor, her confidence unshaken by the spectacle. Stay focused, and remember, the truth is on our side, she whispered as they took their seats. During the hearing, Karen took the stand, tears in her eyes as she described the terrifying encounter with Victor. Her performance was convincing, and she played the victim flawlessly, detailing how Victor had allegedly threatened her family with his status as a police officer. When it was Victor's turn to testify, he spoke clearly and calmly, recounting the events truthfully and presenting the deputy's report and the email scam evidence. His sincere demeanor and the concrete evidence he provided contrasted starkly with Karen's emotional, less substantiated account. After hours of back and forth in the courtroom, the judge finally retired to deliberate. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone awaited the verdict. Victor sat, his hands folded, trying to appear composed but feeling every second of the weight. Finally, the judge returned, ready to deliver the decision. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, the judge began, her voice steady. I find in favor of Mr. Rubov. There's no credible evidence to support the plaintiff's claims of harassment or emotional distress. Furthermore, the evidence suggests that Mr. and Mrs. Wilcox were, in fact, victims of an unfortunate scam, which does not implicate Mr. Rubov. Relief washed over Victor as the courtroom buzzed around him. Karen and Artie's faces registered shock and disbelief as their plot crumbled. Outside the courtroom, Victor thanked Eliza, feeling the burden of the past weeks lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Eliza. I don't know what I would have done without your help." Eliza smiled, her eyes kind. "Just doing my job, Victor. Let's just be thankful justice prevailed." As Victor settled back into his life at the cabin, the tranquility of the mountainous region felt more profound than ever. However, he couldn't help but feel a pang of concern for the teenagers, Emma and Max, who had been unwilling participants in their parents' schemes. Remembering their confused and scared expressions, Victor decided to reach out to the local community center, offering to host a workshop on legal rights and responsibilities for teenagers. Meanwhile, news of Karen and Artie's failed legal battle spread through the community, and their lives began to unravel. The public exposure of their deceit had severe consequences. Artie, who worked in a managerial position, faced scrutiny and eventual dismissal from his job due to the negative publicity and his involvement in a public deception. Karen, who had prided herself on her social status, found herself ostracized by friends and neighbors, her actions having alienated those she once considered allies. In the weeks that followed the trial, Karen and Artie struggled to come to terms with the fallout. Their financial situation became precarious with legal fees mounting and Artie's job loss. The strain started to manifest in their relationship, leading to frequent arguments and blame shifting, each accusing the other of being the instigator of their woes. One evening, as Victor was preparing for his upcoming workshop, Deputy Maris stopped by his cabin. "I thought you'd like to know, Karen and Artie are moving out of the area," she shared, leaning on the porch railing. "It seems they couldn't handle the backlash from their actions around here." Victor nodded, a mix of relief and pity stirring within him. "I hope they find some peace and maybe learn from this whole ordeal," he mused, knowing that while they had caused him significant stress, he bore no ill will. Deputy Maris smiled. "You're a better man than many, Victor. Oh, and the community center is buzzing about your workshop. It's a good thing you're doing, helping those kids." As the day of the workshop arrived, Victor felt a sense of purpose energizing him. The local community center was filled with young people, eager to learn. Emma and Max were there too, their aunt having encouraged them to attend as part of their own healing process. Victor greeted them warmly, pleased to see them taking a step forward. Throughout the workshop, Victor shared his knowledge and experience, emphasizing the importance of understanding the law and one's rights. He spoke about his recent ordeal as a cautionary tale, highlighting how easily situations can escalate and the importance of handling disputes legally and ethically. Emma and Max listened intently, their expressions reflective. After the session, they approached Victor. "Thank you, Mr. Rubov," Emma said, her voice sincere. "What happened? It was really messed up. We're sorry for everything." Victor offered a reassuring smile. "You both were caught in a tough spot, but you're here now, trying to make sense of it all. That's what really matters." As the siblings walked away, Victor felt a renewed connection to his community. His actions had not only cleared his name, but had also opened a pathway to mentorship and guidance for the younger generation. Standing outside the community center, Victor looked up at the mountains surrounding him, their peaks like silent guardians. The ordeal had tested him in ways he never imagined, but it had also reaffirmed his commitment to justice and community service. With a sense of fulfillment and peace, he realized that sometimes, it takes a storm to appreciate the calm. Victor found that his greatest challenges also brought deep revelations and a renewed commitment to his values. Have you ever experienced a situation where a difficult ordeal led you to a greater appreciation for calm? How did it change your perspective on challenges and resilience? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below.